Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the 888 Align podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hanna. I'm a serial entrepreneur who likes to immerse into many facets of life, focusing on growth, mindset, healing, and soul alignment. 8 represents strength, prosperity, balance, power, overcoming, stability, and to me, the yin and yang of life. Pain weaves the gratitude for the beauty in life and appreciation for our generational evolution. You're in the right place if you're looking to dive deeper into finding meaning within yourself and your life experiences, work towards transforming into and aligning with your highest version of yourself, take action steps towards building and creating the life of your dreams, as well as explore discussions on health and wellness, balance, self-care, plus areas like travel, fashion, art, culture, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and even a little spirituality. To be 888 aligned means to be aligning to your strongest and most powerful and enlightened version of yourself. To continue to evolve and always be open to growth while staying true to your core values and individuality. Let's get started with this week's alignment. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this first episode. I'm really excited to have anyone who wants to listen join in here, and I really appreciate you taking the time to check out this podcast. I wanted to start off today by addressing why I'm actually starting a podcast. To me, this is a version of myself I wish I had years ago when I needed answers, some guidance, some experience in what I was going through, and that little light at the end of the tunnel. I just felt like I was always endlessly searching for it. And for those of you that can relate, you get it. Going through really hard times that can feel entirely unrelatable to those around you can really leave you feeling completely helpless. It took a lot of time and effort, but with those really difficult moments, I was led to a new place of self-discovery and growth. And I really hope this podcast brings you value to maybe help you in those areas of your life as well. So this is essentially the present and future me talking back to myself, as well as bringing you the messages and resources that I believe that if you're listening to this podcast, you may also need to hear right now or will hopefully benefit from in this time of your life. I hope that with each episode, you either take something valuable away or take on a new perspective of something, get a little motivation towards something you're working on in your life, or just enjoy having this podcast as a place in your digital world as your go-to for energetic alignment, inspiration, reset, and so much more. I'm also really looking forward to talking about my journey into being an entrepreneur and what it really takes and looks like behind the scenes. And for those of you who are interested in business or starting your own business or entrepreneurship, I really think you'll enjoy those different episodes and topics and discussions because we'll really get into the details and traveling and bootstrapping my business from scratch and working towards building my own empire. Especially as a woman, we face a lot of challenges in business, and as a business owner, being the face behind these spaces that for a very long time have been centered around the male landscape and still technically are in a lot of ways, it really takes a lot of force and self-empowerment, self-control, power over the mind, and a lot of self-motivation, which are other areas I'll get into in the future episodes that relate to both being an entrepreneur and just feeling and being in control over your own life and what you're choosing to do with it. I'm definitely going to eventually be bringing on guests as well when the time is right, which I know is going to be really beneficial to certain areas and topics on this podcast. So with that, I'm going to shift to today's episode. So today's episode is going to be about perception, the subconscious, projection, and how it plays a role into our life and what we attract, as well as the good and bad things that tend to happen as a result. So I know that was a mouthful, but I'm really going to break it down and circle it all back and connect it to each other. So let's get started. And as a reminder, I am not a mental health professional. I'm just sharing from my personal life experience and my opinions and my own resources that I've worked with or researched and gone through. So take what is helpful to you and leave what is not, which is something I always say when I am ever giving my opinion or helping anyone or giving my advice when it's asked for, because again, our perceptions and journeys in life are going to be sometimes similar and sometimes really different. And it's really important for you personally to take what is helpful and to leave behind what isn't helpful. And you discern that on your own. On that note, that is leading us exactly to where I want to start. So when it comes to our personal life experiences, our perception is specifically skewed and shaped to them. So whatever we feel, believe, think, go through, attract, vibrationally align to, go after in life, it's all related to our experiential perception. So for example, if you grew up struggling with money, then your perception is often going to be rooted in scarcity around money and sometimes around other things in life. And on the other side of it, if you grew up with the comfort and ease of money, your perception is likely to be rooted in abundance. Another example is if you grew up in a broken home or a divorced family or one that stayed together. What might those experiences look like for each of those different scenarios? And since they are so different, the perception of what holidays even look like or what your home environment looks like or how you were raised and so on is completely different. Again, if you grew up simply in one religion versus another or one country versus a different country, the cultures are completely different. Your belief systems might be completely different. Your mannerisms and how you go about daily life are completely different, and therefore how you view things is different. If you grew up traveling with your family on vacations once a year or never ever went on a vacation or left the country in your entire life, your perceptions are going to be different. And again, if you grew up in a family of, let's say, doctors and lawyers versus a family of artists and musicians, your life perceptions are going to be different. So all of these things, every single aspect of our life and how we grow up and what we go through and what our families went through in the generations before that and how our life is set up creates our perception of life. So everyone has a different perception of life simply because there are different traditions, ways of handling life scenarios, life experiences, or other rooted belief systems that the generations before you had that they kept and then they instilled into you. And on top of that, the school you go to influences you, what you're taught, your teachers, your community, what sports or activities you did. Everything has an influence, especially when you're operating on autopilot. So when I say autopilot, I mean really just taking in and receiving everything around you and operating on what you see and what you're told, which is usually how we grow up in society. Influences from our upbringing, our friends, our family, our school, environment, and so on all have an impact. And when we're young, unless we're actively taught to challenge authority, which in many societal structures we are definitely not, then we're not going to challenge what we're told from our parents and our teachers and just any authoritative figure. We're not going to challenge what they say, what they tell us to do, the belief systems, the ways of thinking, what we're going to do when we grow up. And there could be times where you did challenge, but a lot of times, naturally and generally speaking, we are not necessarily going against every single thing that we are told when we're young. And on the opposite side of it, you may have grown up being incredibly rebellious and challenging everything, never listening to your parents, your guardians, or authoritative figures. But that still doesn't change anything about what I'm saying, because you were influenced by something, someone, and some environment. And even when you were younger, it's often stated in child psychology that the imprint period for a child is ages 3 to 11. So whenever and whoever you were around at those times is going to influence your subconscious and perception. Then whatever you did, even if you were rebelling at a young age, was still influenced from something. So even when we think we were in control, especially in adolescence, you likely weren't as much as you thought. And we're just at the influence of either our upbringing forming a subconscious rebellion or a subconscious discipline to those around you. Either way, if you don't actively work on your deep-rooted internal system, you aren't really taking control. You're just acting off of your experiences that formed your perception. And I think that's pretty wild, right? Now, our perception can change, of course, and what we believe and attract can most definitely change. But it all starts with your subconscious. So your subconscious is your deeply rooted belief system. A lot of times we are not fully aware of what our subconscious believes until we decide to really dig deep, become aware to it, maybe do some shadow work, and start asking ourselves questions. So if we don't tell our subconscious that we want to change and work to change it, then our subconscious will literally run on autopilot and run our life. So some examples of this could be what you decide to do with your life career-wise, right? So if you were to think specifically about what career you're in or what you're studying in college or what you plan to study, then I want you to take it a step further and think, why are you choosing that career or choosing that field of study, or why did you choose it? Then I want you to ask yourself, who influenced that for you? What parts of your life played a role in whatever you chose for your career or field of study? How did your upbringing potentially influence your choices? This doesn't always have to be a bad thing either. So I don't want you to necessarily take it that way or look at it that way. I think it's important to just analyze ourselves to really decide if what we say we want is really what we want, or is it because we're operating on an autopilot from what we were told we would want or what we were told we would get because of who we are and how we grew up and how our parents grew up or how the generations before us grew up. When you start asking yourself these types of questions, you can start to even dive deeper into core memories that shifted your perception of this area of your life. And then think, what if that core memory didn't happen? Would that alter things for you right now? So I'm going to circle back to the fact that when we start realizing our perception has an impact on our reality, we can start altering what we don't like about what's going on in our reality. If you always look at every single hardship as, why is this thing happening to me? Why me? Which, by the way, is a lot of what I definitely asked over and over when I was going through some of the hardest moments in my life. And I still catch myself asking that subconsciously, and I have to correct myself. You don't always get the answers. You just get angrier and you get more bitter and you stay in this low vibration. It definitely becomes traumatic after a while when things keep repeating. So what if instead you started shifting that thought process to, what can I learn from this? What is life trying to teach me here? What's the lesson to be learned here that I can take with me in the future? Or what is the universe, God, or whatever higher power you believe in trying to show you? When you start thinking like that, things really start shifting for you. You start perceiving life differently. Being in the present moment becomes easier, as well as having gratitude for difficult situations. Because if you are one of those people who have tried writing in a gratitude journal, but you're having a really hard time in life and you really don't feel grateful, sometimes it feels really difficult to relate to those people that say, I'm writing in my gratitude journal every morning. And yes, you can be grateful for shelter and food and water, and you can write that over and over and over again. But what about other things in your life besides the basics and the necessities that you are grateful for? And a lot of times, if we're not thinking in this place of, what am I learning from this? What can I take away from this? And instead, we're constantly in a place of anger of, why is this happening to me? It's really hard to be grateful for your present situation. So when you start thinking like that, things really start shifting. You start perceiving life differently. Being in the present moment becomes easier, and having that gratitude for those difficult situations becomes easier. Because when we are just on autopilot complaining, we really aren't moving forward with anything. Being in the energy of complaining is really a very low vibrational energy. We aren't going to attract the change that way. And we often complain when we are very unaware. I don't know if you've ever experienced, like, yourself even, or someone else just going on a rant, complaining, but they don't even really know that they're complaining. Or you can be going on this rant and you don't even realize that you're complaining so much. And if you just come to your awareness for a second, if you were talking out loud, for instance, and you hear yourself complaining a whole lot, you might be like, wow, that was a lot. Or if someone went on a rant and they kept doing the same patterns of complaints over and over and over again, and you notice this every day or every week or whatever it was, a lot of times those people, they don't even realize that they're complaining. They're just in this autopilot mode of complaining about their life and the things they're unhappy about. And they're just saying these things over and over again because it's their best way of release at that time. So generally speaking, it's totally okay to let it out. It's so important to get help with hard situations, go to therapy, get different resources you need for help, and release the pain of your situations and get the help and support you need. Because everyone goes through hard times in life. Life in itself is traumatic at times. We have our ups and downs, literally with birth and death and everything in between. And I believe humans definitely need help and support to work through the traumas of life. That's a no-brainer. I'm definitely a strong proponent of that, and not just shoving everything down and trying to move forward, because all of these problems or these hardships or these things that we struggle with really usually circle back to us in life at some point if we don't work on them. And they may not be right away, or they might be immediate. And at least from my experience and those around me, that always happens. But it's about consciously getting the help and working on it also, right? So after that, what do you want to do from there? Continue to stay where you are, or take this hard thing or challenging thing and shift it to something different and new. After you realize that there's something you are unhappy with in your life and that you want to change, and maybe you feel a little stuck. And that's when you're complaining and saying, why is this happening to me? But instead you get that help you need, and then you decide you want to change something. Like, you don't want to just stay where you are forever. So you want to try and take this very hard thing and change it into something different, something that can open a door to somewhere else. A lot of times, if we are around family or friends that don't change, we see this feedback loop that happens over and over. And I talk about feedback loops all the time because they really do run our life in some sort of way. And feedback loops can be positive loops or negative loops. And the patterns that just continue on, they can be really about anything in life. It doesn't always have to be about career. It could be about your love life. It could be about your happiness levels. It could be about how you take care of yourself, what your belief systems are. There's many feedback loops in life, and we have to discern which ones we think are negative or positive if we want to make a change. I'm sure if you look at your own life, there are many mapped out patterns, and some good, some maybe not so great, some maybe even going horribly wrong, which I can relate to. Some that have been influenced by your family, some that you created on your own from your own life choices and your perception. Those feedback loops can be amazing or terrible. It's up to you to decide if you want to break out of the bad ones so you can make changes. And that's what a lot of those that talk about making generational changes and doing the shadow work for generational healing are talking about. Doing the work and breaking the cycles. So your perception of life really influences your subconscious. And as you grow, your subconscious really heavily influences your perception of life. They go hand in hand. They play a role in a loop together. If you want to change how your life is going, then take a look at these things on a daily basis, as well as in a deeper way of your life choices. So I want you to start asking yourself more questions. Why you chose to do certain things or have a desire to do certain things, and try to trace them back to your upbringing. You're going to start to learn a lot about yourself just by doing this alone. From there, you can work to change things if you want to make changes in your life or feel unhappy with how certain things are going. Okay, so when we've moved forward from acknowledging we have something we want to work on, doing the work to change that thing, that is a subconscious pattern and certain perception, then we deal with projection. Because once we start acting differently from the people around us, we start getting projectors. And if you spend any time on social media these days, of course, trolls are a perfect example of projectors. But if you do the work to start changing your subconscious thoughts, beliefs, and outward life patterns, and you start acting differently, you start showing up differently, maybe you look different, whatever it is, then the people around you and in your circle are also likely to show up as projectors. And if not, that is awesome. And I'm happy for you, because a lot of times it's not like that. If people don't show up projecting, then maybe they did their own healing process and transformation internally and are more evolved to understand that many people are different and there are many different ways and walks of life. But a lot of times when we are changing from very specific patterns that our families, our friends, or our community are participating in, then we are automatically going to get some projection from those around us. And those are the people that are still in those old beliefs, and they see something different and they project their beliefs and perceptions onto you. And you'll notice it, especially when you start becoming aware of the changes you're trying to make. Technically, the projection was happening all along, but there's a chance you didn't realize it was there as much because you were aligned to the same perceptions and belief systems. It is imperative for you to protect your peace during these times. Projection can show up in a lot of ways, and it can really take a toll on changes we are trying to make. I've seen it with how I changed just simple beliefs in my life to even starting a business and dealing with the challenges of what other people think of what I'm doing, which is sometimes funny when you get to the end of it, because you realize how concerned some people are about what you're doing when it really has nothing to do with them. And the more, I want to say, desensitized you get to how people think of you, the better off you are, as well as the stronger you will be and the thicker skin you'll have. And that's because they are usually triggered with whatever different or new thing you're doing. It can be out of a trigger of concern, of it not working out, disagreement, jealousy, or just a lack of personal experience, and also therefore their own perception. So remember that and just give it a little laugh, honestly, because it really has nothing to do with you. And at the end of the day, it's your life, right? I truly believe you came into this life to learn things and change things, whatever that be, for your soul, other souls, impacting the people around you or the world, and so many other things. And it takes a little waking up to do that. So inevitably, because it is life, we're going to face the challenges of that change. Even if it is a positive change for ourselves, we still may have some negative little things that try to hit us on the way up, and we just kind of have to flick those off, you know? So now I want you to think about how when you change, your soul starts vibrating at a different line of frequency. Think of those different levels of vibrations and frequencies, let's say, as radio stations. Let's just go with that analogy for now. So let's say, for instance, you are on a country music radio station. They're not going to start playing rap and hip hop and vice versa. The rap and hip hop station is not going to start playing country. So when you change that radio station, you get different music. Think of that music as different alignments in life in this example. If you're on one radio station and someone else is on another, then you won't always understand each other. You're playing two different types of music, different feels, different lyrics, different tempos, a lot of differences. What if you were playing them at the same time and blasting them? You're going to get a lot of collisions. You're not always going to hear each other well. You're not always going to understand each other well. And we can even get deeper with this analogy, but what I'm trying to get you to visualize is that those radio stations are frequencies. Now, it doesn't always and necessarily mean just because you're on one frequency and someone is on another, that one is better than the other. And it's better to not think of yourself as better than someone else. Everyone has the ability to raise their vibration or change their vibration. It's just that you're on different vibrations. However, sometimes though, yes, a low frequency will be emitting a low vibe and a high frequency will bring in high vibes, right? But for the sake of thinking of these frequencies as simply different, take a second to think about these radio station frequencies as lines. Anything in that frequency specifically will be on that line. The same goes for the other radio station frequency. So what you think and believe is on your frequency. What someone else thinks and believes is on their frequency. You believe different things, you experience different things, your subconscious and your perceptions are also going to be different, and therefore you attract different things in your life. And yes, here we land onto the law of attraction. Your energy and your vibration, your subconscious thoughts, and your belief system all play a role in your ability to also attract the things that you want in your life. So simply put, and going back to the beginning, let's circle back. If you have a scarcity mindset from growing up struggling with money, and then your choices reflect that. For instance, you don't believe you're good enough to get into a great college, you don't try as hard with your grades, or you know your family can't afford to pay for a good college, so you don't try as hard, or you don't seek those resources for scholarships because you're told maybe from the beginning that that's not where you're going. Or you believe that you're not going to be the type of person to get that high-paying 6-figure, 7-figure job, or you think that you have to work really hard to get money. Your choices in what you pursue are going to reflect that because that's what you're going to be seeking out, and it's also what is going to be energetically attracted to you. So let's think about it for a second. If your parents, your friends, your community influence these things specifically for you, then the connections you make, the choices you make, are going to be influenced by these things. And the opportunities that are presented in front of you are going to reflect that. But of course, you can change all of that. You just have to work on your subconscious and rewiring your subconscious and actively making the changes that you need in order to start vibrating on a different frequency, perceiving life and situations differently, having more gratitude for the present, and attracting the kind of life that you actually want. Because our perception also creates a projection, which also in turn creates and aligns with a certain type of frequency and vibration, and therefore attracts our life and what we have and what we go after and what comes into our life. So you know that cliche saying, you can do whatever you set your mind to. Key word there is set, because when we have control over our mind, when we become aware of our subconscious thoughts and actively change them at the root, well, you'll see what happens next. So that saying still stands. You can do whatever you actually set your mind to. Keyword being set. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and I hope you can take away some helpful things from this episode. The whole point of these types of episodes is to get you really thinking, maybe journaling and reflecting, and give you a space to listen to things you may not really have access to around you, or just challenge you to think differently and hopefully bring some value to you in your life. In the future episodes, I'll definitely have helpful tips or guided steps to take and really so much more. We're just getting started here. This will definitely be a diverse podcast with a whole life of different topics and experiences, and I'm really excited to have you with me on this journey. Thank you for listening and getting into that 888 alignment. I'll chat with you guys next time. Thanks for listening to the 888 Align podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to follow along and stay up to date when future episodes drop. You can listen in on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the podcast on social at 888 Aligned Podcast.